Hello everyone, my name is Meghan LeVota and I offer wisdom, tools, and support for personality integration. And today I'm going to be discussing INFP and ENFJ relationships. So I cannot believe that I have not made this video before, to be honest, because I've made several INFP videos and I know that on the internet there is just so much about INFP and ENFJs, and I've kind of hinted at this topic for a while. I wanted to make a dedicated video about just some advice of things that I would give to both ENFJs and INFPs when it comes to getting along with each other. So, you know, when I first got into type, well, my best friend from, you know, middle school, high school, we're still great friends. Like, she's still one of my best friends, and I will, you know, love her to death, like, forever. Because that's the sort of bonds that INFPs make with people. Like, seriously, one of my best friends of all time is an INFP. And, you know, when I first got into type, like, you know, it just made so much sense. Like, everything I was reading was like, oh my goodness, INFPs and ENFJs are practically meant to be. And I have been interested in several INFPs in a romantic sense. There have been at least a dozen INFPs that I have potentially dated, whereas I have never been in a long-term relationship with an INFP. I have dated like 3 INFPs for like 1 month. So I have like somewhat of an experience of dating INFPs. However, there's always these predictable problems of things that come up. And even in my friendship with my INFP friend, things have come up. And the thing is that I used to believe that INFP and ENFJ was like a perfect match. And not that it's not, but the thing is that we both feel a lot, but we do it in different ways. And so if you can learn to appreciate the other style of intuition and feeling, then this could be an incredibly rewarding and challenging in loving relationship. Like, there is just so much there. There's so much just depth there, where I completely understand why ENFJs and INFPs are attracted to one another. But we really have to be careful to not make assumptions about the other on both ends. So that's kind of what I want to talk about in this video, is that to any INFPs or ENFJs out there that are dealing with a close relationship of someone of the other type, first of all, do not get caught in your idealism about the other person, because both of us are very idealistic. And the thing is that you're going to find an immediate kindred spirit in the other. You're going to feel like they bring out the best parts of you. However, there are almost like these inherent incompatibilities in us that if you want the relationship to work, you're gonna have to do something about. And so if you're coming at it from an overly idealistic perspective and just hoping that it's gonna be completely meant to be, and that there's gonna be you know, the stars are gonna align and then everything's gonna just work out, and there's gonna be like 5 rainbows in the sky and then everything's just gonna, you know, happen. That's not how it's going to work. Like, you guys are gonna probably have to get into some difficult discussions about what you both want, what you both require for communication, because here's where it's gonna come down to, is that the ENFJ doesn't really know who they are as much as the INFP, but the INFP doesn't know how to communicate in a relationship nearly as much as the ENFJ. So the ENFJ is probably going to take the lead as far as communicating, but then the INFP, if you want to be in a relationship, whether that's friends or more, with an ENFJ, you're going to have to be patient with their growth journey, in the sense that you realize that they're not INFPs. We don't have FI as a valued function. We get by with FE and NI, and that doesn't mean that we are just fake and don't know who we are, but we are focused on the greater good more so than our own personal feelings. And so there are some things about ourselves and our own desires and our own, like, really what matters to us and our values that we're going to be continuously discovering throughout our lives. And especially if you guys are young, if you're in high school or college, the ENFJ probably does not know, like, what really matters to them. However, the ENFJ does want to know what matters to them, and you as an INFP could be a wonderful catalyst for that if you can maintain your humility and realize that, yes, the ENFJ is going through this, but you're also going through something that is equivalent. So INFPs and ENFJs can tend to both either feel insecure around the other or feel like overly morally superior to the other. And this is a challenge because it really depends on, like, if the INFP is really wanting to grow their confidence and their communication style, then they might overly admire and put the ENFJ on a pedestal. So please don't, no matter who you are in this relationship, don't put the other on a pedestal. The INFP could think that the ENFJ has everything made. They're confident, they have a group of friends, they belong, they know what they're doing with their career, they know how to be charismatic, they know how to communicate. The INFP, please don't put yourself down on a lower pedestal than the ENFJ. However, the ENFJ might be looking at the INFP and be like, oh my gosh, you guys don't care what people think, you're so creative, you know who you are, you don't let anything change who you are, you're so just like quirky and yourself, and like you don't need anyone else, and you're so independent and just like just so inspiring, you know. Both types, I think, are naturally inspire the other, and so it's this weird feeling of like, so if the ENFJ puts the INFP on a pedestal, then pretty much you're saying that you don't believe that you can get there. And then same with the same with the INFP, if they don't think that they can get to that, I guess, confidence or communication level. But it's like, really, in a relationship, in any relationship, no matter what type you are, you both need some sort of self-awareness, and you also need to be able to communicate. Oh my god, a dog came to see me. Hello! Hi! So, in a relationship, no matter what type you are, you both need to know what you want, but you also need to know how to communicate with the other person. And so the thing is that we are these idealistic feelers, and we have to recognize that one of us holds the other key that the other one doesn't have. No relationship can flourish if both people don't know who they are or what they want or what matters to them or how to process their own feelings without the support of another person, which is something that ENFJ struggles with. But it also will not work if you cannot communicate. So here's the thing, is that every almost relationship that I've gotten in with an INFP has not happened because I had no freaking clue what was going on in the INFP's mind. And the INFP can tend to just want to give space for everyone's emotional processing, but the ENFJ depends on emotionally processing in a back and forth communicative manner. So without the communication, the ENFJ just kind of comes to a halt of like, look, I don't know what you want from me, so I'm just gonna move on. And ENFJs are able to move on very quickly, whereas INFPs tend to be a lot more nostalgic and a lot more clinging on to things. So this can make the INFP feel like they don't matter to the ENFJ. So, you know, this is where communication could have prevented the problem. Whereas, you know, for an ENFJ, oh, whoa, it just got so sunny. ENFJs also need to realize that they don't need anyone to complete them, and that they don't, you know, need as much outward validation as they might think. However, if you're an INFP, you might be realizing like, yo, you ENFJ do not need the validation. You are already so confident. You're already like so great on your own. You really don't need me. However, the ENFJ is going to take a second to come to that conclusion and will take your lack of communication as a diss or as just honestly showing that you are not interested in investing in them. Where an ENFJ is not going to want to invest in someone that is not interested in investing in them. An ENFJ is used to doing all the work in a relationship, and if you don't show that you're willing to meet them halfway, then they probably aren't going to want to invest in you whatsoever, even if they think that you're the most amazing person ever. It's like, to them, it just seems impractical, because an ENFJ is focused on how, how is this going to work? Are we both willing to invest in an equal fashion? So another thing too that could be hurtful is that an INFP might project onto an ENFJ that they're fake, or that they think they're all that, or that they, are expecting something from them, or that they are being pushy or something, or that they're out to get them in some way. Whereas an ENFJ might project onto an INFP as being just kind of passive aggressive and weak and cowardly, and as someone that's going to amount to nothing, and as someone who, I guess, is never going to reach their potential and isn't interested in reaching their potential. And so these are just sort of examples that I've heard time and time again, not only in my own relationships, but in people that I've done mentoring and coaching for, and also my friendships. I'm just the sort of person that's surrounded by NFs, and so this is just kind of a trope at this point. So I'm not saying that to offend any INFP or ENFJ, but like, this is just kind of what to avoid, is that ENFJs, we just are so driven in wanting to make a change in the world, and we want to influence the world for the better, whereas INFPs tend to be unsure in what way they can influence that world. And so it's very easy for an ENFJ, if they don't quite understand the INFP, to judge them as being unwilling to change the world, whereas the way the INFPs change the world is very different than the way ENFJs do, and ENFJs need to cut them some slack, because INFPs are never going to want to, be the person that everyone looks to. I mean, maybe you will in some way, but it's like, we have to just realize that we have different natural energy levels, and that that's completely okay. That doesn't mean that the ENFJ has to be responsible for carrying the relationship, though. The INFP is going to have to show an interest and text back and say, even if you're too tired to text back or hang out, the INFP, you're going to have to say, hey, ENFJ, you're great, but I literally can't talk to you right now because I have other things to do. And it seems like the INFP is afraid to say that because they're afraid of pissing the ENFJ off or making them feel bad. Well, it definitely feels worse if you just aren't honest about it. ENFJs just require honest communication, and we're actually, like, we don't have FI, so we are not really personally offended very easily. We're more personally offended if it seems like the person isn't even making an emotional investment and isn't even communicating. So INFP, really, if you could just communicate, that would make it a lot easier. Where if you are an INFP, I just want to say that ENFJs, we have a lot of trauma around feeling like we're too much, and we have had a lot of experiences, most likely, in which we feel like we have to tone ourselves down because, or else we won't fit in. And if you're an INFP, you probably know what it's like to feel like that you don't fit in. So just realize that if you are making the ENFJ feel like they're too much, or that they have to tone themselves down, or that they're being annoying or obnoxious, then realize that we just have actually a lot of energy, and if that is directed toward you, it probably means that we just are excited about you and like you and think you're cool, and it doesn't mean that we are expecting anything from you or like wanting the same amount in return. We just are very expressive, emotionally expressive people. We've been told all of our lives that that's weird and that we need to tone ourselves down, and we have a lot of pain that comes from people telling us to shut up, sit down, and to not try so hard. We're like, we just have a lot to share, we have a lot to give. And yeah, so there's just a lot of like, the main problem with us is that because we share different cognitive functions, it can be hard to read the other's intentions. And so we just have to just leave a little bit of room for realizing that if you are an ENFJ, you probably are a little bit wrong when it comes to the INFP's intentions, because if you're reading them as, what would it be like if I did this, then you're probably wrong. Whereas if, like, let's say if you're an ENFJ and you're realizing that the INFP is like not texting you back and ignoring you, it's easy for the ENFJ to say like, oh, they hate me, that was intentional, because if I don't do that, it's because I don't care that much. Whereas the INFP might literally just be sucked up in a creative project and be busy with something. Whereas the INFP might even forget that they're supposed to communicate that, or that they could communicate that. An INFP could work on setting boundaries so that the ENFJ won't bother them. So if an INFP just like sets their boundaries of communication and says, this is when I'm available and this is when I'm not, the ENFJ would be happy to you know, meet those needs, because we're all about meeting people's needs. We love just working around people. Like, and honestly, like, if an INFP and ENFJ were to get together in a romantic relationship, I think that it would be a weird like blessing in disguise for an ENFJ if an INFP did set hard boundaries and say, hey, this is the time I'm working on creative projects, this is my alone time. Because honestly, what it would do is it would provide a very fulfilling relationship to an ENFJ, yet it would also kind of force the ENFJ to introspect and think about what they want to do in their alone time. Whereas if an ENFJ is single, they probably are looking for the one, like, pretty much constantly. And so we kind of are unsure of how to fill our free time. We can be. And at least, like, for me, I've noticed, like, being in a relationship, it makes it easier for me to enjoy my alone time, because I don't feel like I have to use that time seeking anything. Where, like, I really feel like I'm, like, on earth to, like, seek this sort of deeper connection. And, like, whenever I feel like I have my fill of deeper connection, it actually gives me space to focus on things just for me. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to give myself the space to do that. Whereas if you are an INFP and in a close relationship with an ENFJ, you might just encourage the ENFJ to, while you're alone doing things for you, it might just encourage the ENFJ to do things alone for them. So really, it's just that element of communication, and also just remembering to not assume what the person's intentions are. Because the INFP, if you were to look at someone like an ENFJ that has so much to say and is like always ready to talk and all of that, you might be wondering, like, what is it that they're trying to get from me? Like, what is it that they want? And you might not realize that because ENFJs use extroverted feeling and introverted thinking. We tend to have this strong introverted thinking principle that we believe that it's the right thing to do in order to treat people in XYZ way. And so we are expressing this FE emotion out of conviction for what we think is the right thing to do, rather than trying to get something from you. We are honestly so out of touch from our introverted feeling that it doesn't even make sense to think that an ENFJ is trying to do X, Y, and Z in order to get a certain result for us. Because our problem is that we don't know what we want. We don't know what we want to get. So I promise you, like, perhaps a very, very twisted, unhealthy ENFJ that is just in the complete shadow and like so removed from themselves. I mean, every type can be a bad character, right? But it's very, like, maybe that type of ENFJ could be like, I guess, trying to get something from you, but I just want to like say that that's very rare. And so at least try your best to not make that assumption, because like, try and have some empathy for the fact that ENFJs do not have a lot of FI, and don't take your FI for granted, in the sense that ENFJs, it takes us a while to tap into that. And we, you know, are just so focused on the greater good and whatever mission and purpose in our life that it's hard for us to tap into what our heart is really telling us. And so that's difficult. And so just making space for that difficulty. Just as, you know, ENFJs need to make space for how difficult it can be for INFPs to communicate their feelings. Because communicating my feelings and communicating, you know, facilitating a discussion about feelings is so easy for me, and like ENFJs need to realize that for INFPs it really just takes them out of their comfort zone. And so not judging the INFP who is perhaps having a hard time getting out of their comfort zone, really it's just important to keep in mind that with this relationship dynamic there's a lot to gain and there's a lot of comfort involved as well, but there's also a lot of getting out of your comfort zone that is required for even getting on the same page. So if you're willing to do that and you're willing to not make assumptions about the other person, this could be a very rewarding friendship or relationship. If there's anything I discussed that you'd like me to talk more about and more videos about this type dynamic, let me know, or just anything about INFPs or ENFJs in general. I also offer typing services, those will be linked below, and mentorship services. I also have a membership group for those of you who are willing to go even deeper into discovering how you can use your personality to be your best self and for self-growth. I have workshops once a month within that group. The first one is April 18th, where we're going to be discussing surrendering from the control for dominant function. All of that is linked below, so thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.